time. Welcome. I now will call to order. Oh, we've got one more commission member who's arrived. I'll call to order the 2018 Charter Revision Commission that is holding a meeting in the Bronx. This is the second of 5 public hearings, and anyone who wants to testify can please sign up at the welcome table. I'd like to begin by introducing our 2 host commissioners from the Bronx, Marco Carrion and John Siegel. Commissioner Carrion, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Chair.
You can
Oh, here it is. Thank you, Chair. It's great to be here in the Bronx, where I was born and raised. As everyone knows, the Bronx is the home of the New York Yankees, of the real Little Italy, the birthplace of hip-hop, and the home of the Bronx Zoo and the real New York Botanical Gardens. You know, all jokes aside, this is really a dynamic, diverse, and vibrant borough that's filled with a lot of pride. And I'd just like to say that the folks in the Bronx never judge themselves or define themselves by their past struggles, but by the incredible future which this borough has in front of it. So thank you so much for everyone joining us here today.
I'm told that everybody has to turn off their mic for anyone else. Let me ask the rest of the commissioners to introduce themselves. We'll start on my extreme right with Kyle.
Good evening. I'm Kyle Bragg, and I'm Secretary Treasurer of SEIU Local 32BJ.
Good evening. My name is Dale Ho, and I am the director of the ACLU Voting Rights Project.
Good evening. My name is Mendy Marachnik. I'm the president of COJO of Staten Island.
Good evening, Carlos Chasura. It's a pleasure to be in the Bronx. I'm from Brooklyn, Marco. I would argue with you about Little Italies, but you can take me to dinner on Arthur Avenue anytime you want. In my day job, I serve as the president of the New York Building Congress.
My name is Cesar Perales. I should have introduced myself a moment ago. I have the honor of serving as chair of this Charter Revision Commission. I recently stepped down as Secretary of State of New York. I've had a long history in public service, but since I'm in the Bronx and having recently passed Yankee Stadium on my way up here, let's hope that that streak continues.
Good afternoon. I'm Una Clark. I'm a former member of the New York City Council. I am a trustee for the City University, so this beautiful institution in which you are sitting is one of the colleges within CUNY. So I am just so honored to be here. I'm also a member of the Charter, and I'm very pleased to be a part of this group of commissioners, all who are intent on making sure we listen carefully and we understand exactly what the issues are in all of our boroughs so that we can come together and make sure that we deepen the participation of our people in the city of New York and also make sure that everybody is counted and is accounted for.
Hello, my name is Wendy Weiser. I direct the democracy program at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law School. I'm really delighted to be here, and I also want to thank all of you for being here and for living what we are trying to accomplish, which is increased participation in the life of our city and democracy.
Good evening, John Siegel. I do reside in the Bronx nearby, and I'm a lawyer in private practice as well as a mayoral designee to the Civilian Complaint Review Board, reviewing citizen complaints against police officers. And I'm pleased to be here and to hear your views on city issues tonight.
And once again, I'm Marco Carrion. I serve as the Commissioner of the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs.
I, too, want to thank all of you for coming. This is, for us, very important that you get an opportunity to express yourselves, let us know what is concerning you regarding the New York City Charter. Again, what we're here to do is to listen to you as we prepare to revise, make amendments, and make changes to the New York City Charter. Under the law, the mayor of the city of New York can appoint a commission on any particular year. We haven't had one in about 8 years, I think. And that commission usually examines not just the issues that the mayor has raised and asked, but looks at the entire charter. The charter is the governing document of the city of New York. It's like a constitution. But our role, really, before we can do that, is to listen to the people of our city. And that's what we are here to do tonight. The recommendations that we ultimately make are presented then to the voters in November as an amendment. I'm sure all of you have gone into a voting booth and seen these complicated amendments that you sometimes don't have time to read, but you're asked to vote yes or no. I'm hoping that this November you'll get a chance to read them well and that they reflect perhaps something that you will have heard tonight that has been told to us by you, the residents of the Bronx. The mayor himself has asked us to look at something in particular, and that is, how do we make New York City more democratic? What is it that we can change or insert into the city charter that will enable us to have more fair elections, have more people vote, and maybe take money. The importance of money is lessened by changes that we make. So we're particularly interested in your views on how elections are held. But we want to hear everything you have to say about the city charter. And with that, let me begin by quickly introducing 3 of our staff members who are new and haven't been introduced even to the other members of the commission. Ingrid Gustafson, who is on our legal staff. Michael Massaino, a tech. Steve Newmark in operations, and Mary Van Noy in operations. You should know that after we conduct this hearing here in the Bronx, we will be conducting hearings in Queens on May 3rd, in Brooklyn on May 7th, and in Manhattan on May 9th. Our hope is that after these initial borough hearings, we'll have an opportunity to go into a variety of neighborhoods to have smaller hearings there as well. Again, public testimony here is open to everyone. The hearing is about the charter. If you wish to speak, please sign up at the table, and I will take the liberty of limiting the speakers to 5 minutes each, because there are a number of them who have indicated an interest in speaking. Any comments from any of the other members of the commission? I tend to feel that I'm dominating the conversation. If not, we will hear from our first speaker. I think it's Egidio Cementilli. You'll tell us what organization, Mr. Cementilli, you represent?
Yes, I will. Commissioner. First one, hit the go, man. First one. And I've had 5 minutes, am I correct?
That's correct.
Egidio Cementilli for the record. Egidio Sementilli. And it was an honor to see Miss Clark here, great woman. Many years I saw her when she still is a firebrand, but I saw her. It was great. And the clock is running. Pelham Bay Community Improvement Safety Organization, not-for-profit. I'm here today. Welcome, commissioners, and thank you for coming here. First issue would be.
Let me interrupt you for a moment. The gentleman back here is interpreting for the deaf. I failed to indicate that we've gone through a series, taken steps to ensure that everybody can participate and hear what is being said. So your words are being
Thank you.
translated.
And maybe we could run the clock again, since we're stopped fresh. Thank you. Thank you so much. Cimitelli, Giulio Cimitelli. My first issue is with CCRB. I'm happy that the commission is here. I would like to see that the Charter Commission here propose, and hopefully the voters will accept, an independent agency, not a mayoral agency, an independent agency with the power for discipline. Right now, they don't have the power, only to recommend, and it's solely based on the commissioner. I believe that should be an independent body. It should have the right to fire and discipline officers, and the only way it would be created through this revision as an independent agency, as the controller, and also the public advocate, and in turn as the community boards are independent. And speaking of the community boards, this unicameral government that we set up here it might be good for a small town. Minnesota, I think, is the next largest state that has the form of government with 600,000 people. New York City, it does not work. And I believe to improve that and to make it more transparent, I believe that the community board should also be an independent body, not appointed by the borough president or recommended by the city council, but appointed through a election process, may it be, or a petition process. And it should be as an independent body, in the same manner as the public advocate and the controller were established as a balance to this one-body system of government. Is a balance, and that's what the charter states. It's identified as a one-party system, and the balance of it is the controller and public advocate and the community boards, respectfully. There should be no attachment to any political, because it becomes an extension of the politics. And that we do not want. We will get greater representation. That should be an issue that should be brought up. Third issue, what I'd like to see on the charter, since we're here for this, I would like to see the allocation of public monies by elected officials. At least, minimum, to go through a review process through the community boards. Unfortunately, we have politicians that allocate millions and millions of dollars to groups that no one even knows that they are in the community. So we need to open up that process. We need the allocation of discretionary funds for the city council to be an open process and a review process by a board. In this case, I think the community board already set up for it. Would be a great opportunity to. And number 4, since we're here, number 4, I would like to spend my next 1 minute and 30 seconds to say, I respect everyone on this board. But I hope that this board does not become the platform for a third term, for a mayoral third term. We, the people, the will of the people, were denied through the prior mayoral, and we lost our will legislatively I hope that this board here does not become a platform for Mayor de Blasio to extend to a third term. And I beg and humbly suggest that to be independent, and this board and all the individuals that serve on this board, because at the end of the day, you will make the recommendation, not the mayor. So I hope you respect the people and respect the community and the will of the people. This board, honorable board, cannot be a front for Mayor de Blasio to usurp the will of the people and try to get a third term. And as we know, and we read in the papers, the lack of participation from the public voting will be able to achieve that if you allow it. If you allow it. So I thank you, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to be the first and to testify here. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't leave. We may have a question or two.
Of course.
I guess I want to make sure I understood your point about the CCRB, that what you were, I believe, saying was that your proposal would be that the CCRB would make final determinations on police discipline as opposed to making recommendations to the police department that the police commissioner then acts on?
Attorney, yes, attorney, that is what I said. But in addition to that, I did also say that there would be a separate, independent entity of government in the same way that the charter indicates or describes the public advocate and the controller as independent entities of the charter and not mayoral agencies. I would like to see that absolutely to be. In fact, today I was on the phone with CCRB making a complaint. And interesting enough, after I spent an hour on the phone making my complaint, they tell me, well, we don't have jurisdiction over this issue. It's going to be sent down to the chief of department and as an administrative. And what was it? Basically, it was officers refusing to take police reports. And we have a systematic problem with our precincts that certain policies, maybe it might be citywide policy, I don't know, but certain issues that they refuse to take complaints, and therefore becomes, knowing that they will become not a disciplinary issue with CCRB or reviewed by CCRB or IAB, but it will be referred back to chief of department as an administrative issue. That's, you know, it takes the power, the teeth, the spirit of the law, I guess, or what we as the public believe, what CCRB disseminates as to be an agency of righteousness and to be a fair balance of police public good. And I think that's not the case here, and the only way it will be through an independent non-mayoral agency.
Yeah, obviously I don't know the specifics of the case you were talking about, nor is this the time or place.
No, is it?
But I can say that there are a lot of cases at the CCRB where that we hear and make recommendations on where the complaint is that an officer refused to take a citizen complaint. And we recommend frequently discipline for officers, particularly people, you know, at the desk in the station house or even commanding officers in station houses who don't appropriately take complaints and forward them to CCRB where they're supposed to go. So I'm not sure of the specifics, but, and in terms of the decider, I guess you're saying there should be like an independent judge who would decide these cases?
I think the board. No, mine is to limit to the board, okay. The board's authority. You have a CCRB board. I read through the profiles of all the board members, great profiles and so on. I think they're capable and could be fair and honest to make decisions like that.
Right. Just to clarify, the board is is not comprised of a majority of they're all mayoral appointed, but they're designated equally by the mayor, the city council, and then 3 by the police commissioner.
The appointment could stay the same. It would be an independent agency.
Thank you, I understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, since I was a member of the city council and you talked about the issue of term limits, I believe in a democracy. The voter should decide. And if we want to be democratic, in one way we have to be democratic all the time. We need voter education, and that's what we need to advocate for. They should know when their representative is no good and kick them out. But when somebody is good, they should be able to remain there. In other areas, it becomes a career, and it does make the person who is the elected official non-effective. So I just want to put that out there so that you understand. I spent my 10 years and I would not come back, but let's say somebody come, the first 4 years, they learn how to be a council member. The next 4 years, they start figuring out, what the hell am I going to do with my career after this 4 years? So they become ineffective. So I would argue that the people should decide who their representative is, not some rich person who put a referendum and say, well, 8 years is good enough. Somebody else could say 12 years is good enough, and somebody can say 20 years is good enough. So as far as I'm concerned, having served in the city council and know what colleagues do and can do, I am not for term limits. So let me just let you know that I think the people have the right to decide who their representative will be.
Let me just say, I don't expect this to be on the ballot. This is not an issue that it's not been raised anywhere else. I don't think anybody on this panel is interested in extending term limits.
Great to hear from you, and thank you for saying so. And look at me at the eyes, and look at the public in the eyes, and the eye, and telling them this statement. That's a powerful statement from the chair. I do thank you for that statement.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else, or am I? Oh, I'm good. Thank you, sir. Thank you again. I'll try to write something and email it.
Wonderful. Thank you. And that goes for everyone in the audience. We are accepting written comments and questions. Let me call on Jose Arroyo, 32BJ.
First of all, good evening to all. Part of my appearance, I just came from work. I apologize. On behalf of 32BJ, I work in River Park Towers right down the road. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Everybody, I hope you have a blessed day. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for holding today's hearing on behalf of myself and my members of SEIU 32BJ. We applaud you and your efforts in strengthening our city democracy, and we ensure that everybody in New York voices count, basically. Our union member is 163,000 strong here in New York City alone. We represent over 85,000 buildings, service workers to keep our city's residential buildings, schools, office, stadiums, and airports clean and safe. We proudly fight for the rights for our members who are working class and predominantly people who are people of color, and immigrants to live safe and healthy lives with the dignity and respect. Through my union, I've been lucky enough to work. Excuse me, I apologize. Through my union, I have been lucky enough to work with more. I'm nervous. I apologize, guys. This is like last minute, spur of the moment. I really apologize. Through my union, I have been lucky enough to learn about the democracy, the Democrats, and I've been provided a vehicle of civic engagement. And I'm grateful to the opportunity the union has given me to make my voice and our voice heard. at the state level, and one important way to get our work on election by communicating with the union brothers and sisters about the candidates that I feel passionate about. In New York City, because of our companion finance and law type of communication is considered a companion contribution. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm really nervous. Our contributions and so they are prohibited. It does not make sense. I know through my own experience and the conversations between union members is one of the most effective ways to advocate. This is why I believe that we need to revise charter in order to clarify that these kinds of important conversations about candidates can happen. Not only is members to members communication a critical way to advocate, but it also gets countless members involved in our electrical and policy companions. We can count members to members communications as a companion contribute. Oh man, I'm so nervous. I can't even see this. Not only is member-to-member communication a critical way to advocate, but also gets countless members involved in electrical policies companions. We count members and members communications and companions contributions, and we distinctly, oh man, I'm so nervous. I apologize, guys. When we count member-to-member communication, this kind of boots on the ground works instead. I'm so sorry, man. We should be doing everything we can to ensure the robust civic participation, not to stifle it. Thank you for your time and efforts to ensure that our democracy works for all, including working people and the unions. I apologize, guys.
Does anybody on our panel want to comment? Carlo?
I don't know. First of all, you did a great job.
Thank you.
And I always say this, if we had to come and do the jobs you do, we couldn't do it as good as you. So the fact that you're here and taking the time to do it. I just have a comment. I grew up in a union household. My mother was a member of Local 372 for DC 37. And when my father died when I was a teenager, I can tell you that were it not for her union job, we would not have had medical insurance.
That's so true.
And after she had a bad stroke, it would have probably lost her house were it not for the union medical. So I give a lot of credit to what you do.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the good work to all you and all the members.
Thank you kindly.
Hey, Chair, I have a question. So you started off by saying you just come from work?
Yes,
to
I just
testify?
came from work, me and my co-workers, yes.
And can you tell us why hearing from your union on political activities or campaign-related issues is important to you?
Sure, we're definitely trying to strive. You know, when we do our picketings, we're always outside in the street. We're trying to get someplace, some shelter, some warmth, something that can benefit our workers, and our voice can really be heard. Like we're very strong. We do what we have to do. We're outside constantly, rain, sleet, snow, it doesn't matter, just to get our point across. And basically, that's what we're here for, just to try to get our voices heard, and hopefully, you know, it makes a better change for us and for the people in our environment that we're helping.
Thank you.
I take your comments to be supportive of the idea that we as a commission ought to figure out more ways to make it easier for the people like yourself to participate in politics, in elections, right?
That'll be appreciative. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your ears. I appreciate you. Have a blessed night.
Louis Rocco, the president of the Westchester Square Civic Association.
Good evening. My name is Louis Rocco. I'm president of Westchester Square Civic, and I am honored to be here tonight. Commissioners, I'm really honored to be here tonight. Tonight marks this night marks 6 years of my civic organization being in operation. I took this endeavor on to make our neighborhoods clean and safe. I found the newspaper article, going through the news, and I said my mission was to make my neighborhood safe and clean. I reached that goal. But the hurdles that I've come through were overwhelming. Our government does not work. They've had me take my signs down. They punished me with building department inspectors. They used the police to harass and stop my play streets, and on and on and on. I came close to having a breakdown. I got on my knees and I said, God, I didn't finish my mission. And this is what it's about. It's about good people wanting to make the city of New York work. I love the city. I've worked on the issues that our mayor wanted to get done. Vision Zero, they stopped me or tried stopping me, and that means they were stopping our mayor. My daughter's an attorney. I had 2 days to get the paperwork in. I got the paperwork in, and I succeeded. They made me go through hell, getting signatures, stopping my bumps. I didn't have enough signatures. I had too many signatures. And what I'm talking about is our community boards. Our community boards are not brought up to time. What I'd like to see done is independent community boards. If you want the city to survive, you need people. When I opened the Civic Association, I wanted to teach people about civics, about going out there and voting, getting involved, volunteering, and becoming a good representative in this city. When I see people move out, it is horrific that we leave it and they say we're only leaving bad politicians and bad people. Some of my recommendations that I want to see is, I want for you to get on a community board. I've been on community boards. I've been almost everything you could mention. This man has been through it, even working in 32B. I've been a police officer, firefighter, and it's not that I'm just bragging. And where did I wind up? In the Bronx, in the city of New York, to really give back. I'm a 9/11 survivor. I'm not bragging. I didn't want anything. I don't sue. I'm out here to make my community the best place. And what we're looking for is quality of life. All right? We've almost met that goal. We need to change the community boards. The community boards are hindering us from doing this. We have people that gave up on the political system. My recommendations are change the charter on the community boards, free them up, don't make them a political agenda, open them up, let you go out there, get signatures from the community, and people will welcome you and get these signatures. For you to get on these community boards, you have to go and do the legwork, the same legwork you would have to go and do petitions to get on to vote. So the recommendations I make is that our community boards have to be more independent, and you're going to hear it from more members and more people, because if you don't free up the communities, you're going to lose it as a political agenda. People are getting sick and tired of living in New York. I thank the mayor. He's done a lot of great things, but there's a lot of people that try stopping him. I stood by him on the Vision Zero, and I fine-tuned it, and as we speak, I'm still getting streets done. I'm still getting a lot of stuff done in the community. I've gotten streets paved, and I don't think politicians like when you get things done. I get out there every day. Really, we're not looking to take your jobs. I have no reason to run for politics. I want the politicians to start working. You work for us. We don't work for you. And this is, you got to understand that. We're good people. We have seniors that are eating out of garbage cans, and it goes on and on and on. Where are our community boards? Our community boards are only there to discipline, and some of what I get from the community, we're only an advisory board. Are you guys an advisory board? You guys, no, you're commissioners. You're commissioners, you're above that. But what the community boards do is they will go after you and gang together. They work as criminals. I hate to put words like that, but they're supposed to be, the clock fell, that means I got plenty of time. So they're supposed to be working with us. We need to change this attitude. I think on this election, Make My Life is on this election. Put something on there that frees the communities up, and you'll see a better city, and you'll see us vote.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kyle Bragg. It's two things I want to take exception to I heard tonight. One, that this honorable chair, this honorable commission is somehow the puppet of the mayor. That's not the case. Each of these honorable commissioners up here are charged with the responsibility to look at this New York City charter to examine whether or not there are things that we can do to make this city greater and to make it more democratic, more inclusive. So the implication that we might be puppets of the mayor, I take great exception to. The second thing is I sit on Community Board 13 in Queens, and I take exception to the fact that you think that we are also puppets of some political apparatus and that we are the handmaidens or the strong arms of some political force that personally I don't know about, because I have been on that community board and they're representing my community, and that's my charge and that's what I do, and I do that as with much honor and distinction as I could possibly do it with. And so what you're speaking of, I don't know how each and every community board in this city operates, but I can guarantee you that's not how mine operate, and that's not been my experience. And so I just wanted to state that for the record, that community board members are not criminals, because I don't consider myself a criminal. I consider myself a person of our community who's doing his civic duty by representing that community in the best way that he can. So thank you.
Can I respond to that, please?
Yes, but please be very brief.
I sat also on Community Board 9, and while I was on there in the Bronx, I worked with the parks, and it was hands-on. We did Field of Dreams. We got a lot of stuff done. It's not an easy job. It's not a thankful job. But we need to make some changes. And as far as I can't suggest or whatever it is, we do have people that shouldn't be on the community boards. And that's why I'm suggesting term limits on the community boards. I'm suggesting also to make sure that it's independent. Once it's independent, it would open it up and the city would thrive by it. We have a lot of talent, but they're not coming to the community boards because they have a little clubhouse, which I hate to say, and there have been arrests on community board members. There have been people arrested, okay? So that doesn't bring out the best of the best. We want the best of the best in these community boards, and we need to make them more independent, and we need to put it on as a vote.
All right. Mr. Rocco, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I've been getting lots of sheets of paper for representing people who want to speak. I'm going to have to limit it to from 5 to, let's make it 3 minutes. Is that fair to everybody? No. But you understand the problem. You want everybody to get an opportunity. Yes, so you'll get an opportunity. Sheikh Musa Dramali, is it? I must have destroyed your name. The handwriting is not the best.
It is fine.
What is your name so we will all hear it correctly?
No problem. My name is Sheikh Musa Drame.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Honorable Commissioners. Thank you for having me here to testify as to how we can make New York City a better place for all. I am suggesting that post 9/11, the level of expenditure in law enforcement and intelligence and incarceration is unsustainable. Therefore, we need to have Commissioner of Peace or Commission for Peace in New York City Charter, so that the preventive services that can be provided on a volunteer basis will eliminate the need to spend billions of dollars, for intelligence that creates more adversarial relationship among residents than they serve. For the past 10 years, I have traveled around the world to see how people maintain peace and sustain peace. And the best thing that any city can do, especially New York City, is to create an environment where citizens become, preventing agents, not just depend on law enforcement that unfortunately don't always have the best relationship with the community that they serve. I have submitted a suggestion as to how that will work in 5 boroughs, and with limited expenditure, next to nothing, and it will create a whole lot of preventive services, from the gangs on the street to religious conflicts to extremism to terrorism, you name it. We can do the preventive work without involving law enforcement, and if we do that, we will save billions of dollars, and perhaps maybe we can prevent events such as 9/11 and any others. Personally, I have been active in preventive mechanism. Here in the Bronx, for the past 24 months, we have removed 105 gang members through these preventive services we provide. And around the world, our organization spread from here to 23 countries, bringing people that do not normally talk to each other to sit at the table. And that is what I'm suggesting, so that we have commissioner for peace at the mayor's office, just like we have other commissioners for preventive services. Thank you.
That is a very interesting idea. And I invite you to submit a description of how you think it can be done, as you suggest, across the 5 boroughs.
Absolutely.
I detect, like myself, that you're an immigrant and that you're looking for ways in which to settle and make sure that communication is respectful within the community, and apart from that, that you serve as a voice for what would otherwise be disruptive in the community. And whether you call it peace or not, it's about a way in which people conduct themselves, both because of their religion, because of their race, because of settling in, and sometimes people don't really recognize that a behavior is to the person what their culture is. Is that what we're looking at?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Roxanne Delgado.
Hello. 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 Hi. Okay. Okay, the Campaign Finance Board is responsible for protecting tax dollars and the public interest, but is unable to do so when the laws are set by the fox in the chicken coop. As per my spreadsheet, which I sent to you by email, Queensboro President Melinda Katz received over $560,000 in public funds and outspent her 2 opponents by over $1.39 million. Her 2 opponents received no public matching funds and raised less than $11,000 combined. Over half of Ms. Katz's spending went to consulting fees. Even though Katz had the advantage as an incumbent, she used public monies against 2 unknown candidates who barely raised 1% of what she raised. As expected, she won her re-election with over 76% of the votes, and Katz returned no money to the CFB. Similar case with public advocate Tish James, who received over $750,000 in public monies and returned no money back to the CFB. None of her opponents received any public funds, and all 5 combined raised less than 2% of the $1.67 million that Ms. James raised. And as expected, James won her re-election with over 77% of the votes. Same with Mayor de Blasio, who returned only $377 of the $4.88 million he received in public funds, only $377 out of $3.4 million money that he received in public funds. None of his opponents, except for the Republican candidate, Nicole McIntyre, received public funding. And he outspent her 2.7 to 1, and I expected won the re-election by over 66% of the votes. Same with the city council races. For example, Upper East Side Council member Ben Callows. None of his opponents received public funding matching. We spent less than 7% of the $301,000 that he raised, And as expected, he won re-election with over 80% of the votes. Not to mention that Callis did not return any of the public money, even though he has $26,000 left in his campaign funds and just spent over $5,000 this year for tote bags. Why is he spending money when his campaign received over $125,000 public funds and has not yet returned any of it? Shame on the media and shame on the good government group that continues to say that we have the New York State campaign financing is the gold standard. It is a sham, so it only gives millions to incumbents to demolish their opponents who are at a disadvantage already. Now I'm rushing it. The CAFB is not it's not leveling the playing field, but instead it is undermining challenges to the establishment. And the worst part is the CAFB is using public money to undermine our democracy. The money could have been used for our parks, our libraries, our food pantry. So I recommend that public matching funds is not made in any race when other opponents receive no public funds, and when the matching will give someone a financial advantage over 25%. For example, candidate A received raised $5,000. It takes 1 minute. I'm almost done. Half a minute, 40 seconds. All right, this example, my recommendation. For example, candidate A raised $5,000 and is eligible for $18,000 in public funds. However, all his other opponents did not only raised $20,000 and not eligible for public funds. So the highest raised by one of his opponents is $6,000. So therefore, candidate A could receive $1,250 in public funds because his total campaign funds won't exceed over 25% than any other opponent. So what's disturbing is that City Council has just introduced legislation that would increase the matchable amount from $175 to $250 and increase the limit to public funds from 55% to 85% of the total spending limit. So under this scenario, the financial gap will widen between the incumbents and the opponents, and the worst part is the public will be basically funding raises for the incumbents, and which only will undermine our democracy more because incumbents win 99% of the time. And I'll make it short because I'll end it. But the point is that the Campaign Finance Board needs to be independent and has to have its own authority. We need to protect the chicken coop from the fox. And the rest is, you have an email, spreadsheet numbers. I gave you the data. I did a lot of work, so.
and I apologize for
I couldn't read
your
the
time so that you
Sorry.
had to run through it. But we are very interested in this subject. I don't know if I mentioned it as we started out. I mean, our interest is in looking at campaign financing, so that your comments are very appropriate, and I hope we get them in writing so that I can understand.
Yes, I emailed them to you an hour before, and also made similar comments to the CFB because I actually ran for city council as a third party. I had no chance to win. But the point was I saw how the system works, and the fact that they're receiving matching funds against someone that has no chance of help, and I only raised, I used my own money. I spent less than $500. I didn't raise money. And they get matching funds, 6-to-1. Come on. I mean, it's a joke. It's unfair. It's an abuse of power. So, thank you. Am I done?
I just wanted to say that part of the matching fund was meant to help to make sure that communities that were less fortunate, including myself as an immigrant, to run if there were no matching funds at the point, the rich person, because they had money, would be able to win, and therefore I would not be able to tell my story to my community so that I could be elected. So it is meant to level the playing field in terms of who's got money, who's got people with money, and who's got to depend on the public so that they can do the public good.
May I respond? But that may have been the intention, which sounds great. I love that intention, in fact, but the reality is that that's not what's actually happening. What it is funding the incumbents and actually squashing down any challenges to the establishment, which is why people don't want to waste time and money. I mean, I gave out $500. $500 it's a lot to me, but I did it because I wanted to bring issues to the table. But most people are not going to invest their time and money when they have no chance of winning, and on top of it, the incumbents being funded 6-to-1 when they're not receiving any matching funds. It's not a level playing field. It's a scam. So unless you put these amendments where that no public matching funds is given to the incumbent if none of his opponents receive. Why is Melinda Katz getting $1.3 million when her opponents raised $11,000 combined? Come on, is that fair? It's not fair.
Okay.
I mean, now I'm upset.
We
I'm
don't
sorry.
want to look at the individuals. We can all.
I put in a spreadsheet for you.
We can look at the system and how it is working and who benefits from it, but it's not to say it was not a good system.
Oh, the intentions were great.
That allows for the matching funds and that the rules could be reviewed to look at that. If we go back to the old system, then there will be people who will not, including yourself, who would never be able to run unless you have money by yourself.
No.
And 11,000 is not gonna cut it.
Yeah, but why would they give Melinda Cass 1.3 million then if her opponents only raised 11,000? That was the point. The thing is to fix the system, because unlike every system, they abuse the power. So you have to fix the system. It has to be reviewed, because when you give an opponent an incumbent 1.3 million, while his other two opponents have no public funds and only raised 11,000, you know, come on. I mean, does that seem right to you? Because it doesn't seem right to me. I'm sorry to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Grace Ramsey.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I'm here on behalf of Fair Vote, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that advocates for electoral reform. I'm here to discuss instant runoff voting, or ranked choice voting as it's often known. This is the primary reform that Fair Vote advocates for. I personally am Fair Vote's Deputy Director of Advocacy. So ranked choice voting, or instant runoff voting, instant runoff is what it sounds like. Instead of having to have a separate runoff election, you could combine those two elections into one. Voters will be able to rank their ballots in order of choice. If no candidate reaches the threshold that would trigger that runoff, and instead of having folks come back to the polls, you eliminate the candidate with the fewest votes. Voters who selected that candidate as their first choice would have their vote instantly go to their second choice. And then you count the votes again to see if somebody has a majority or whatever the threshold would be. I think this system would be really well suited for this city, considering runoff elections are very expensive and turnout is usually very, very low. There are cities across the country already using this system, so there are examples that can be used, and the equipment that's being used in those cities is very similar to here, so there's already solutions in place and rules that can be drawn upon. And then,
Can I interrupt you
sure.
there for a minute? One of the concerns I've had, I'm an advocate of instant runoffs, is that our machines may not be able to handle it. Are you suggesting that you know of a place where
Yes.
similar equipment is used?
Yes, so you have the DS200 system, I believe, which is also what is used in Minneapolis, that uses, they call it ranked choice voting, but it's the same process.
I'm sorry, what are you calling it? Rain?
It's instant runoff
No, I
voting
know,
or
but what are you
ranked choice
calling it?
voting. That's what they call it
Well,
in
I
the
didn't
city.
hear what you said.
Ranked choice voting.
Ranked choice.
Yeah, so one describes kind of
Ranked.
the elections itself, the other describes the process for the voter, but it's the same process. I'm sorry for the confusing language. But they use ES&S equipment with the DS200, and it would be a simple software upgrade to do it, and they've been running this for almost a decade now, so there is experience using it. And cities that are using this, in addition to being able to eliminate a costly runoff election and to make sure that we are electing people when the most voters at the poll, kind of some secondary benefits that I think prove not just practicality, but improving democracy. We're seeing candidates reaching out to more voters, because when you know you're going to need supporters of your opponent's second and third choices to be elected, you are incentivized to reach out beyond your base and to bring people further into the fold of your campaign. In addition to that, we're seeing more civil campaigning, as you can kind of imagine with that. If you're bashing your opponents, you're less likely to get their supporters second choices. And in cities where we're seeing this, we're seeing much more issue-focused campaigns rather than kind of mudslinging that we've grown accustomed to, which can be really frustrating. We're seeing very civil issue-focused debate. So I'll kind of leave it there, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I have a question or two. Do you see instant runoff or ranked choice voting, the purpose of that primarily to deal with elections and runoff elections where there's low turnout?
There's been various reasons why cities have moved forward, some because they have nonpartisan elections, others because they have runoffs. So San Francisco, as an example, eliminated a runoff by adopting instant runoff voting, and has saved millions of dollars at this point by not having to run that election, while also seeing increases in representation of people of color and women. So it kind of has twofold benefits in terms of representation and cost savings, but largely cities have found a secondary election to be unnecessary and looked for alternatives, and instant runoff has come up.
Let me turn it around and ask
sure.
it the other way. Do you think it's an appropriate solution in a situation where there's a very high turnout runoff election?
I don't know of very many high turnout runoff elections, but if it were the case, I would say that, I mean, if a system's working, possibly, but looking at the turnout data that I've seen in this city, that doesn't seem to be the case.
So I know of a type of runoff election where there's a high turnout.
Mm-hmm.
It's runoff elections for mayor in the city of New York,
Sure.
which have historically had record high turnout. And so that's why I'm asking the question as to whether I understand the argument for some offices where we have abysmally low turnout, but in those few situations where we've had mayoral runoffs, we've had record high turnout. And so I wonder about the need or appropriateness of this remedy for that election.
I mean, I think the commission consider all of the angles. If there are offices where the system currently is working, then that's a consideration you have to make. It's your city and you understand your elections. I would say in other offices where you are seeing turnout that is extremely low, it's definitely something to consider. So other cities have carved out, some offices are elected with this system, others aren't, and that's perfectly easy to navigate on a ballot if need be. And so that's a consideration you can make.
I have two questions. So one is a follow-up. Does Fair Vote, or do you have a recommendation? That was my question as to which offices are appropriate in New York for this, or is that not part of your recommendation at this point?
I would say it's probably not part of our recommendation at this point. I think we want to have a robust conversation. We have a lot of activists on the ground that we talk to and work with, and I really would think we'd want it to come from them. I just wanted to speak on our behalf with the expertise that we have, so I think that's a discussion that, at least for now, we would not have an official position on.
And then the other question I have is on the examples of how it's working in other cities. Are the cities that are using some form of instant runoff voting, do they have city elections separate from other elections, or are there any that do it at the same time as there are, statewide or federal elections as well?
Both would be the answer. So Minneapolis and St. Paul have their elections in off years, whereas Oakland, San Francisco, and a few other cities in the Bay Area have theirs in during on-year elections. So it's been done both ways, and it's been pretty successful in both situations.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm just curious on two things. You mentioned some cities that do nonpartisan elections. Does your group have a position on that?
We don't really take a position. Cities can structure their elections how they need to. We just want to make sure that systems are in place that ensure every vote matters. And in cities with nonpartisan elections where they're, however they do it. Santa Fe actually is a great example. They just switched to instant runoff voting. And they had a one-round nonpartisan election where if 5 candidates ran, somebody could be elected with 23%. So they changed to this and have a system now that functions better. They have that kind of majority component so that you're hearing kind of where the consensus is without having somebody win with a small base being mobilized. And there's all sorts of games that can be played or strategic voting that voters have to do in that scenario.
And you would not advocate for eliminating runoffs?
With ranked choice voting, I would. Without ranked choice voting, I probably wouldn't. But I would say that this is a system that can combine those two elections and get you the same thing at once.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Kalick.
Thank you. I am David Kalick. I'm the Deputy Director of the Fiscal Policy Institute and also Director of Immigration Research. I have to first of all say, I'm so pleased to be here. It's great to hear everybody. It's fantastic to see people so engaged, so I hope that your commission figures out ways to continue this into the electoral process. I wanted to also speak in favor of the idea of instant runoff voting. Since I come here from the Fiscal Policy Institute, you may expect me to talk about the fiscal benefits, which I will. But I think that's not the real reason to support or not to support this. I think there are fiscal benefits. You do save a lot of money by not having runoff elections. It can cost about $10 million to have a runoff election. But if that $10 million were in support of greater democracy, better representation, I would be in favor of spending it. I think this is a rare instance where you can save money and also improve the democracy along the way. I was going to say some things about low turnout elections, and that's obviously a big challenge and an advantage of having an instant runoff is that you get the full electorate to participate. But since you brought it up, let me also say, I think that there are some big advantages even in the high turnout elections, in fact, maybe even especially in the high turnout elections. One of the advantages of ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting is that you change the dynamics of what it's like to be in the campaign, right? So if you have a number of different candidates running, rather than writing off some and saying, okay, well, this person's going to win in this district and this person's going to run among this constituency, and so I'm going to focus on where I can win, right? You have a number of different candidates who are saying, well, okay, that's probably the way it is because they're very strong in that place. But at the same time, those people are going to have to make a second choice, and I want those people to make the second choice me. So if you're, if you're running in one neighborhood really strong, I think that really does have an effect on how people are likely to run. And I think that is an effect not just in the election you're running at that time, but over the longer term in building constituencies together to be able to form sort of what the next election is going to look like. As well as, I think that you see, people, in the low turnout elections, you see low turnout, you see a skewed turnout, right? There's a change in what the electorate looks like. And you also see people turned off to the election when their candidate is out. They say, well, I'm not as, there's some bitterness often. And not just from that particular person, but for the whole sort of constituency. Right, I think it is true that in other locations, as Grace just said, that the experience has been that more people of color are elected, more women are elected. It's more possible to run as an additional candidate because you're not at risk of seeming like a spoiler, right? You can come into the election and you can be somebody who builds a constituency. In fact, as we've seen often, people get drawn in, people who are not voting altogether in any election get drawn in when they see somebody who they're really excited about. And I think that can be something that can serve not necessarily to get that person elected always, but to get that person's people to vote for somebody else as well. So as I said, I think the fact that you save maybe $10 million for each time you don't have to have a runoff election is certainly an advantage. You could have a bunch of after-school programs and you could do a lot with that. But I think that's not the reason to support it. I think it's really an additional benefit, you could say, to having a system like that.
Just one follow-up. I'm very interested in increasing turnout, getting more people to vote. Are you suggesting that if you have instant runoffs or ranked voting, that someone who says, I'm not going to vote because my candidate can't possibly win, might be more inclined to vote?
I think so, if of course there's also a candidate there who is running, right? So you might have both more people running to represent the different constituencies, and also those people who are going to try, hopefully, to be part of the system by saying, okay, vote for me because I represent what you're saying or what who you are, what you want to see in office. But if I don't happen to win, vote for this as your next choice. That's going to, and then you have that dynamic among the various people running who all are going to be angling for who's that next choice going to be.
I just wanted to follow up on that last point. Have there been, in the places that have had instant runoff voting, a documented increase in the number of candidates? And then the second question is also, does the turnout increase both at the runoff stage and, it's one stage, but are you saying that there's also greater turnout in the underlying election as well?
I think so. I'll leave that to the Fairvote people to say for sure. I don't know if you, right? Yeah. I think there's been an increase in turnout, and I know that, I don't know for sure who the people are who have, I guess it's hard to tell, every election is unique, and there's been a lot of change in how many people have run in different New York City races for reasons not related to that, right? But I think you have seen certainly very nicely documented examples, like in Minneapolis, of people who, the situation I was talking about, where people who did better than they probably would have if they were you know, if they were to be the sort of third or fourth candidate. Maybe they wouldn't have even run if they hadn't seen the possibility of running that way, but also felt like they built a constituency, they built their own name, but they also built some sense of power for that constituency within the election when people might otherwise not have voted at all.
Let me ask Ms. Ramsey if she might provide us with data about the increase in voter participation that is of interest to us, and if you think that the instant runoff does improve turnout, we'd like to see it.
Thank you.
I can read the first name, Faluso. Is there someone by the name of Faluso here? R with a Arabi? They may have left. Leah James?
Good evening. My name is Leah James. I'm a community organizer here in the Bronx, well, 5 boroughs for the last 20 years. I'm just have some suggestions. Knowing y'all hear y'all saying voter engagement and turnout, so I'm speaking on a grassroots and community level. Bringing up and transforming the community boards. And I'm thinking that can community boards have urban planning committees? We see a lot of rezoning happening in the Bronx where city planning brings the designs to the community. Is there a way that community boards can do a needs assessment in their own districts and say what they would like to change and bring it to city planning themselves? And also, I'm noticing in some community boards, the members don't reflect of the community. Is it a way that community boards can be mandated? Maybe that's not the right word, but have 5 business owners in the district, homeowners, NYCHA residents, stuff like that. I've been in community boards and there are no NYCHA residents on the board. So I'm just wondering, is this, y'all charter is able to refine and change and upgrade the community boards to reflect the communities that they're supposed to represent?
First of all, thank you for being here. I was on the Charter Commission 8 years ago, and one of the things we had heard was something you brought up. So you're really thinking of something positive, which is that if a community board is to focus on land use, which is one of their biggest roles, that the city should provide as part of the budget a specialist in land use, so that every community board should have somebody that understands land use full-time working there, which is pretty good. The other thing you brought up is something that, and so I spent 5 years as chief of staff to Brooklyn Borough President Marty Markowitz, and one of my jobs, you know Marty, and one of my jobs was to do the community board appointments to oversee that. And we always said, you know, there are some districts that have large NYCHA populations. How do we not have residents from NYCHA?
Exactly.
There are some districts that have large business districts. How do you not have a small business owner or 2 or 3 or 4? So I think that's something I know I am personally very interested in not abolishing community boards, not changing them, not making them independent because they are actually independent, but how do you make them better? And I think your 2 suggestions interest me a lot.
Because I know that when it's time to get voters, people like to go to large institutions, residential complexes. You go to NYCHA, right? But some of the residents don't even have political education, right? So if the community boards could be that outlet for them to be on there and then educate, this is my politician, or like you said, Ms. Clark, like if the representative is not for that community or not, how would they know, you know? So, and another thing that I stumbled across was that I've been in the community trying to get youth to be on the community boards. right? And there's not a space for youth. You have an education and youth committee, but there's no youth on those committees. And when we got some youth to apply to be on the community board, or just to see how the meetings were, they had to stay to like 9 or 10 o'clock, and their parents is not playing that. You already know that, right? So, but they want to be part of the process. So is there a time frame? I mean, maybe this is a borough president question, but how there's an outlet for youth to be a part of the community board, especially with all this happening in the school system in the city?
So I can tell you that the Manhattan Borough President has done a good job
Yes.
in including members of younger people. But there's definitely something to look at there.
That's just my suggestions. Oh.
I think that all of what you've said made sense because community boards should reflect the community and the residents of the community, including our younger people, because they also have a lot of understanding of the community. And I am interested in how we get a youth on and how we would, make sure that that young person can be at a board meeting and get home on time to do homework.
That's right. That's right.
So if you have some recommendation and you want to put it in writing, the way you see it, please send it to us. I'd be very interested.
I will. Thank you. Have a good night.
Kafumba Darling.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have a little bit of accent, but when you listen to me carefully, I think you will understand what I'm saying. I'm here about Uber and Lyft to testify to that. Uber and Lyft, we work for them, but we are the ones that are doing the job, but we're not getting the money. They are the ones that are getting the money. They take a lot of commission out of our money, which make it difficult for us to live in the city that we love to live in. And they take their Uber fee or Lyft fee, and they take the black card form, and they also take the sales tax, which I don't have problem with because I want to pay my tax. But the black card form, that is like a worker compensation. When something happened to you, the time you're not working, they will use that money to pay you while you're not working. But even if something happened, you don't get that money. And on top of that too, what about if you drive for 1, 2, 3 years, you don't get into accident? What happened with that money? While you, the driver, that money is kept for you just in case if something happened to you, they should give you some of that money back. But you drive for many years and you don't get into no trouble. There's any way the city can do something about that so that the drivers can get some of this money back.
With all due respect, let me cut you off and tell you that we as a commission have no involvement with Uber or Lyft or even the Taxi and Limousine Commission. I would urge you to talk to your city council representative where you live. I don't know who it is, but it's the city council that can pass legislation. Would you say that's true? You want to say something?
Are you referencing I know there's a bill that has been brought up in the city council. Is that what you're referencing regarding the fee that Uber and Lyft drivers would have to pay, the yearly fee?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that is a city council matter. I know there was a hearing on that today.
Okay.
I do appreciate
Okay. Yeah, and I also wanted to talk about the housing. I don't know if you guys have something to do with that also. Or if not.
You know, and we constantly hear about housing and the need for more housing and affordable housing. But we, as in the city charter, doesn't speak directly to the issue of housing. So that's, again, something that your city council representative could help you with.
Okay. Ah, okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Ngando Abrois from the African Advisory Council. Since I mispronounced your name, perhaps
yes,
you can
Gandhi,
pronounce
that's
it.
fine. Yes, it's me. A couple of things. I'm not sure if this is going to fall into this commission, but I got to mention it anyhow. One is a car insurance. No. The South Bronx in the 70s was considered to be the high-risk area, meaning to buy a car. I remember in the 90s when I bought my new Pathfinder, the insurance was $4,000. That was fine because there was a lot of crime at that time. We have changed. Things have gone better. There's no more crime, but nobody ever went to revise the fee. Somebody living up a Fordham Road, it's about $500 difference than somebody that lived down in 149th Street. I think this is really something that the state should look into. I've spoken to the city council. I spoke to anybody I spoke to, they say it's a state issue, but somebody's going to have to look into this.
It is a state issue. It's a state insurance department. I'm afraid we have absolutely nothing to do with that, even less than on housing. So
okay, I'll move to my next. Okay, we have also the Board of Education. There is a problem that I think should really be considered. Give you an example. The Bronx has the largest concentration of African descent. The school in the Bronx do not have a teacher, African teacher. Now, and there is a problem of culture in the school, which we always go and intervene, is the teacher always put our kids that they don't listen, they are disobedient, all those things, because in Africa, a child don't look at the parent in the eye when he's talking to him. Just because the student is not looking at the eye of the teacher while he's talking to him, he considers the child that he's not listening. In our culture, you would never see a child, I'm talking to my son, but things have changed here, but in Africa, the child will look down. That does not mean that he's not listening to you. You listen with your ears. I don't know if in America, kids listen with the eyes, we listen with the ears. So you're talking to a child, and then for that reason, teacher get upset, send the kid to the office, and that create a problem. And our kids always go detention, get in detention just because of that little matter. And I think the school should, the Board of Education should consider those things. And the second thing, in terms of health, a couple of years ago when we had Ebola, in America, people hear about Ebola then. It was happening over there across the river, across the pond. So nobody bothered until he started hitting home. Then people went like, somebody dropped a bomb in a country. We travel, Africans travel to Africa very often. It takes a vaccination to go there. The vaccination, the insurance company don't cover. It takes about $400 for a parent to get all the shot to go vacation in Africa. So now, if a parent does not do that and find a way to travel without it, goes there and catch a malaria and come back here, goes to public hospital and get treated for free. That's about $10,000 right there. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that $400 the city can spare.
I'm going to have to be a terrible person and tell you that that's really an insurance question, health insurance question.
Well, this is HAC isn't part of the city.
Yes, but HAC can't determine whether or not you're going to get reimbursed money from your insurance company to pay to get your immunization.
Well, again,
HAC ends up taking care of whoever gets sick.
But under public funding,
yes.
Do we not pay for that?
Yes.
But that could have been prevented if we cannot admit that into the coverage, which is.
Oh, I understand, but we have nothing to do with the coverage. Is my point.
All right. I move to my next move.
I'm glad you have a long list.
Well, it's not that many. It's just I just wanted to see where we can get with it. The next thing is we're thinking we should have an African commission in the city here to deal with our population. We have too many issues that nobody listens to us. I think if we can have a commission that can look in, because nobody can look into your problem better than yourself. So I think we should be able to address our own issue in the country. We're part of the society here. I think we can include that. The communication, for instance, if you look into a cab driver, for instance, we have tons of Africans that drive cab in this city. I could say pretty much about 40% of them, but we have no representation. So I think we need to mix these things so the communication can be clear. We can all, when it comes to the TLC, when it's time to vote for the situation, we're not included. So I think these are things that are just going to make a little difference than just keep jumping on the big stuff. Those little things probably can help better.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Una Clark, and I'm just going to give you some advice. I am an immigrant from the Caribbean, and when we wanted to empower ourselves, we went to every church and every place that we could go to get our people to become citizens, to register and vote. So when the time is right, somebody can advance a person from your community who would run for office, because there's no way somebody's going to give you a commission and give you a voice and a mouth unless they know you can vote. So, I just want to let you know that citizenship, and those who can vote should vote for those who cannot vote, because at this point, when we're looking at all of what's happening in Washington, we have to educate people who are immigrants. Diversity in the classroom and diversity in the teacher, we can look at that, but this is not the forum in which all of that is being addressed. But you should, since you have an African organization, you need to be able to speak to the Chancellor of the Board of Education about cultural diversity and what it means, what your customs and traditions are, and how they're to be respected. We do that, and if we didn't do that in the Caribbean American community, we wouldn't have a voice today. So out of my trial and error, I became a council member, and my daughter is in Congress. So organize, educate, and educate. Don't complain, just work.
No, this is not a complaint. Again,
You're doing a good job, but I'm just saying part of what you need to do now is organize your community. Those who are registered to vote, you make sure that they get out and vote, and those who are eligible to become citizens, let them know that they're not going to go back to the motherland, as I call Africa. They must stay here and make their contribution to the community of which they are a part. And if you need me to come, I'll come.
Sure, I'll invite you.
If you invite me to come,
yes,
I'll
definitely
come. Because I'm an immigrant, and I just love immigrant communities. Whichever one it is, I just want to empower communities. And you are on the right track, but you are in the wrong forum.
But at least somebody heard me. See, I got you. I wouldn't have got you if you didn't come in here. So thank you very much.
I think we all heard.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm having a little trouble reading this name, but it's someone from the African People's Alliance. There you are, sir. You're going to come and pronounce your name for me, will you?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Junaidu Titikpina. In the community, people just call me Mr. Titi. I'm the president of African People Alliance. I'm glad my predecessor, Ambrose, already tackled my main concern, which you positively answered, which is to have African community part of the commission. You know, our community is getting huge, and especially our youth. We are so concerned about them. We push them to school, and eventually they are doing well in schools, but we want them to have role models. It's very important. We want them to see some folks that are in front of them that they can look up to. So one way or another, we need your help. And I'm glad the previous charter commission, I was there too. So I hope all what we are saying today take in consideration and get updated, so for the good cause to everybody. And I also want to touch the case of the police brutality. I travel a lot, and I end up here. But all what I've been seeing, when police want to do something with the individuals, they just kill. Why not injure somebody and then later take that person to the justice? What I've been seeing, I remember when my junior brother wanted to join law enforcement in my country, my mother told him, never kill. At least just injure and arrest that person, never kill. So by here, people easily, police protect himself more than the citizen. That's why I'm so surprised. So I wish you can look up that and let police, you know, whether shot on the arms or legs, to just stabilize the criminal instead of killing people like animals. That's one thing. And another one is CD ID, how you call it? NYC ID, that is so limited. As the president of the second largest community in the Bronx, I will urge you, if you can help us, make that CD to become, driver license. It can be driver license one way or another. Most of our people, when they come here, they're already over 18 years old. They're already driving back home. So when they come here, they come with their driver licenses. If that driver license can be converted, that's another thing. So I'm urging the commission to also look upon that. And I think Mr. Ambrose already tackled the main issue, which I'm so proud of. The African People Alliance is an organization that most likely work on our culture preservation and our culture exhibition as well. We have youth, we help youth to play, to do sports, play soccer, and all legal assistance we can give to our community. So we need your help. We need to shape up so we can be a better community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Denise Green. Denise may have left us. Michael Belzer? Belzer.
Belzer.
All right. Come on down.
Good evening. My name is Michael Belzer. I am a community advocate and a former candidate for City Council. And today I am, let me just get this going, sorry. Today I'm here to speak about the New York City Charter. The New York City Charter, especially since New York City moved to a strong-term mayor governance in 1989, has left large gaps of power and large gaps in the amount of power and input citizens have on how their tax dollars are spent and how their city is run. In our current environment, this is exacerbating income inequality by giving developers a leg up on our communities, not seizing every opportunity for civic and political engagement, and gives the administration too much control on how to allocate our resources. I have trust that the members of this commission will seriously examine the following chapters and sections of the Charter and change accordingly. Section 197A, amend to require each community district working with their respective borough president and community board to present a district-wide community plan with the help of a dedicated planner once every 10 years. Section 197C, amend to mandate a more accountable pre-certification process. The name of an applicant shall be made public if multiple major revisions have occurred. Plans that are well out of character, even as of right, should also enter the public realm. Section 102 and 211. We are told to take in new developments to generate tax revenue, but the formulas set in these sections use preset calculations and allocate expense and capital funds based on population and size, not on economic activity. I suggest either a percentage of total receipts to the general fund from each borough be remitted back, or a new tax levy charge to a that would go to a dedicated borough fund. Section 1052, amend to have the chairperson of the Campaign Finance Board picked by the speaker in consultation with the council. Section 2800, make all board meetings transmitted via live stream. I'll also have more testimony and feedback at a later date on community board reform. Chapter 10, amend appropriate sections to mandate PBNYC for each council district and a similar program at the borough or citywide level. We also have Chapter 12, looking at the possibility of establishing a surface rapid transit sinking fund. I don't know if it's possible. And also Chapter 71, establishing a standard for equitable street allocations for arterial and secondary roadways. And I didn't have enough time to parse through the charter on electoral reform, but I stand for, and many people do stand for, nonpartisan elections, instant runoff voting, a lift of the cap of matching funds from 55% to 100% of the spending limit, and I thank you for your time today.
I, for one, appreciate the fact that you took the time to identify particular parts of the charter that you want us to look at and to make those recommendations.
I think that as a former candidate for city council, that you understand the politics of it all.
Right.
And because you understand the politics of it all, that you know, your recommendations are in keeping with your beliefs and in how you think that the city council would be more effective, and then the charter would then in many ways certify or agree with all of what you've just put in.
Well, it's not just it's also, you know, a lot of the work and different, over the years, of what people have expressed, different community groups, people in the community. That really informs my position. And I don't know if the commission could look at something, but we have council candidates and people run for office, and there's one winner and then everyone else is the loser, right? But in that process, the losers learned a lot of information about the community. They learned the different issues and what people really want to prioritize. And I don't feel like the city does anything with that information. You know, why is it that only the winner is the one that gets to make their community better, or like, you know, their issues that they're going to champion are the only ones that are heard. Like we're in the race that I was in, I mean, it's over $500,000 spent. And that's a lot of people touched, a lot of people engaged. What is the city doing to extract any value out of that? I mean, we're giving out all this money in public funds, and then, you know, most of the people never get heard from, or nothing is acted on from all that energy again. So I really challenge you all to think about how that could happen. Maybe there could be some kind of debriefing review process that could occur, so that there can be better alignment of the needs and priorities of the community, regardless if the candidates won or not.
And because we're looking at how to deepen the democracy and to get more participation, as a former candidate, I hope that you will stay engaged and educate the community about what the democracy is all about, why one wins and the other loses, and that we support our community after the fight, but then we participate in all of what happens in the community, and that is in educating voters.
Right, right. And I think the live streaming, this is on my page, going out to about 2,000 people in the district. So, you know, that's what I hope the community boards and every single city agency and public meeting can turn into. And, you know, we definitely need to keep engaged and stay involved. That's why I'm here, and I really appreciate everyone's involvement in this.
Thank you for coming.
I had a question. Your presentation had so much in it that I probably missed a lot, but there were one line that you had, I wanted to see if you had thought about any more detail, was the notion that there should be disclosure to community boards of major developments that are being planned or built as of right.
Right.
Do you have any further thoughts on what would trigger that, how it could be mandated, or how that could be done?
So to me, the developers are building within the guidelines that are set before them in the zoning text, but when there's a project as of right that is just so far like outside of the scope of anything surrounding it, I think something like that would be helpful if the community or it was brought to the public that, hey, this is like a real large projects that's coming in. We're in the process of getting them to certification, but we wanted to let you know the name of the developer or the group that's managing the project, so that conversation can be started. I know some council members would like this process so they can put in their own ULURP to possibly downzone. I don't really have an opinion on that. I just like that if we're making, if a developer is coming in and really going to alter massively, even within the as of right, but there's nothing really around it, I feel like the community should be given a heads up, so maybe that they can, the developer and the community could be like, hey, we're going to start with a project that's more in line with the community, because right now, as you all know, when it goes to certification, it's usually the biggest project that could possibly happen, and then we get this short amount of time to whittle it down. I think when we have these much larger projects than anybody would ever imagine, just have left it as of right coming in, that the public deserves to know.
Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. I think that that exhausts the list of people who wanted to speak to us. I do want to affirm our continued commitment to hear from the public. And I really want people who have not had an opportunity yet, or who are thinking about questions, to communicate them to us at your earliest convenience. It is important to us. I don't know if anyone else on our panel would like to say anything about this evening's hearing. If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second? All those in favor? Opposed? Hearing none? Motion is carried and we are adjourned.